All right, guys. I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to serve, provide the value proposition of talking about different things to help you enhance your practice and take it to that next level, so to speak. Today, what we're going to talk about is needs-based selling. Uh, I'll just ask the question if you want to put a thumbs up, or if you're on video, if you want to raise your hand. How many of you have ever been sold or tried to be sold a life insurance policy where someone walks up and says, "Hey, you need $1 million. Hey, you need $250,000," with no rhyme or reason at all? It's kind of interesting. I actually had that similar experience when I was working at MetLife. No, I was working at AIG. So when I was at AIG, I had an agent who I used to sell multi-carrier to the career group when they couldn't sell their proprietary product. And I had one guy come up to me who was a customer of mine. He sold some outside carriers to support, different type of clients. And he walks up to me, he says, "Phil, I'd like to earn your business." I said, "Okay, I'll bite, because he's a good customer." He's like, "Let's meet after work today, 6 o'clock in the cafeteria." I was like, "All right, let's do it." So I went into the cafeteria after work, and the agent was there sitting down with an application. And I sat down, I was like, "How's it going, so and so?" He's like, "Good, I think you need $1 million of term insurance." I was like, "Okay." So in my opinion and in my head, I was like, "Well, joke's on you, buddy. I'm only gonna take this if it's standard or better." And I know me, I'm not standard or better. And so I went through the process, and turns out I got standard in like 2 weeks with the medical, everything. So I had to take it, the best I ever got. But the thing is that when it comes to the relationship, when it comes to the opportunity in the future, how sticky is that business, right? How sticky is that conversation? So when we think about how we want to tackle the objectives of today, we want to talk about a true structured approach. Like when you talk about a structured approach, you're really looking at designing the opportunity for the client so they have the right need. Um, and delivering that effective method can give you those gaps to really give them that custom tailored solution. So we're going to dive in really when it comes to actual case design, actual development of building rapport with the clients, because the clients are your network. And I always like to say your network is your net worth. So are they going to lead you down the path to referrals to other clients, or is it just one case, you churn, burn, and move on? In this scenario, when we talk about this, the objective of why we do needs-based selling is it is client-centric, right? Every strategy is tailored. And in doing this for over 18 years, not one client has ever been the same. And I think that's important to understand because everybody is different. So you have to have tailored strategies that build that trust and credibility. And the big part is it builds that stronger retention. So if you're in a situation where, for example's sake, you're just meeting the customer, for the first time, and you sell them and then you think that's the end of it. I've told customers, I said, this is not the end of our relationship. This is actually the beginning. Because life insurance is not a 2 month process and you're done. Life insurance, if done appropriately, you're with that person for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, which lead to, a strong ethical standpoint of you delivering a concept to them. So we talk about ethical selling. You focus on solving an issue and not just putting a product down their throat. So that's the idea here is how can we do custom tailored plans to give that value proposition to the customer so they not only become a customer for life, but they also become a sounding board for referrals and opportunities as well. And I will say this, if anybody has any questions, if you want to raise your hand and if I can call on you then, I'll gladly do it. Or if you want to put it in the chat as well, I got two monitors, so I'm kind of monitoring both. See what I did there? So the needs-based selling process, basically what you want to kind of start with is a simplified version of a conversation. So if anybody has done like a point of sale meeting with me, you'll see that I start the conversation at a very, very, very basic level. Because, and I'll even ask customers, I said, all right, I'm going to ask you right up front. Are you more of a visual learner? Like, do you like pictures? Or do you mind conversation and we just have a conversation? 50-50. I've had people both ways. Some people like to see the pretty pictures. Some people like to just have a conversation. And so when I sit there and I start talking to them, really what I'm trying to do is discover everything I can about them by asking a lot of questions. Okay. So when you discover the opportunity and find out things like goals, concerns, financial status, those are all very important to help you build your case, right? Once you have your case set, whether it is either that meeting, if you can do it fast enough, which comes over time, or if you feel the client is, kind of blowing steam out of their ears at this point, they've had enough, you want to set up a presentation for a next time or a next conversation with clear results, a great story, and then, move to the close or implementation. So everything should align appropriately, but how do you start that process, the needs-based selling process? Open-ended questions. So as you see here, some of the open-ended questions they have are, what are your top financial priorities? What concerns you most about your financial future? That's like a financial advisor type question. If you're engaged in retirement, if your objective is to look more for, say, annuities, these are some good questions. Um, Good ones for the life insurance side. What keeps you up at night? I mean, that could go a couple different ways. I have a fear that my business is going to fail. Well, tell me more. Why do you think your business is going to fail? Well, I've got these big orders and I have to do this and I have to do that. Okay, what in my head now I start thinking, what can we solve? I like to say we solve problems people didn't know they had. So, what keeps you up at night is a great way to start a conversation. Maybe after a little bit of fact finding, tell me a little bit about your job. Tell me a bit about, your spouse's job if they have a spouse. If they don't have a spouse, do they have kids? Do they have a mortgage? All of these are fact checkers for typical financial needs analysis. Now, you can either think of one in your head or if you need one, we have Excel sheets. They look kind of like this. Okay, so financial needs analysis. It has all the stuff that you could ask. This gets very granular per se. We should have this. We should have this in a more of a online template in the very near future for people in Valor. So you will see something here that allows for more of a financial needs analysis that can be done quicker or, online. But, I tend to do it, mentally in my head to just round and summate some numbers, because you can get pretty close, in shooting distance, with certain questions. So, like for me, what I usually say is, tell me, put a number in your head, and I tell you the number. You take your salary and you do 10 times your salary plus whatever your mortgage is, and how many kids you have, 150,000 per kid. And what typically happens is it's around $1 million, 1.5. One time I had three. So you'll find an opportunity from that standpoint to get that number in their head. And then the explanation is, okay, if you don't make it home tonight, this is the pain point or the need that you would have for 10 times your income. You've got your kids going to college. You want them to go to college, right? And then you also have the mortgage. So the mortgage is paid off, so it allows for the surviving spouse to have some place to live, take care of their kids without any worry, and then ultimately provide that value proposition that they can take care of them for at least 10 years. Now, some people will say, oh, this is too much. Okay, where do you want to skimp? Do you want to skimp on the need, or do you want to skimp on like a duration of time? Because you can do term insurance, you can do permanent insurance. That's where talking about active listening really comes into play, because when you're actively listening to the customer, you'll find out if they need a mixture of permanent and term, maybe all term, maybe all permanent, depending on where they are in their situation. But if you don't stay fully engaged, understanding exactly what the needs are, then you're going to miss out on the opportunity to give them the right solution. Now, when we talk about tools and resources, as I kind of showed you a financial needs analysis, some carriers actually have them on their websites. So for those who deal with business owners, you can actually partner with Nationwide. Nationwide will actually do a business owner evaluation of the business for free. So I believe Principal does it as well. So you can actually have, if you're working with businesses, partnering with certain carriers, they have ways to get you some extensive information for your customer to see the valuation of their current business. You can use a simple financial needs analysis, or like I did, just a very, very basic conversation. So if you're talking with just two spouses, you see, a couple kids running around the house, you kind of have an idea, but you don't want to be, you know, too forward, I guess you could say, and just simply say, well, you need term insurance, right? Because we just don't know. Financial calculators, you can also find those at various company sites. I usually just, again, eyeball it because, at the initial point, we just want to figure out a good number to kind of work with. And then most of the time, the clients are going to try and find a way to either fit in their budget or figure out they might be asking for too much and then reduce the number. So that's all part of just kind of rounding out. For those who aren't as experienced from that standpoint and you want a financial calculator, I can find one for you. Just email me, and just let me know you need one. Um, Client educational materials, those are brochures. You can get those off the carrier sites. What I often tell people is that, we have 30 plus carriers at our fingertips, right? But do you really need 30 plus carriers? Probably not. So mastering about five carriers or so, maybe even three, and then have a couple spares, so to speak. You can start to master the products, understand the brochures. The carriers are more than willing to send out brochures to agents so they can have them on the ready when they're talking to customers. I used to have to send out a ton of them when I was an RVP, but they can definitely help in the process. CRM systems, now that is a unique animal. So some people, they'll track their business through just simple means of an Excel sheet. Okay. So met with Phil Resch. We talked about this. We'll follow up this day and maybe put a reminder in your phone. For me, I use a CRM system, so I use a form of Go High Level. I've got a marketing team that, we use that. And from the conversations that we often have from the CRM system, it helps me because I can put tasks in, I can put opportunities, likelihood of closings, and things like that. So it helps me stay organized, and then I have a piece of equipment that's going to send me a reminder. So if you are more ingrained in the system, more full time, seeing a lot of customers, a CRM system would be advantageous for you. If you are brand new, just stick with Excel, something very simple, very easy, and don't go too crazy. But the key part is as you get further along, that automated part is going to be very golden for you, given like there's a lot of experienced people on this call. And so, how do you keep track of all your in-force business, right? Everybody has a different way of doing it. The CRM system can help with that. The carriers have a CRM system, but even the carriers don't tell you when something is due, so to speak. So there's a lot of benefit of seeking an outside opportunity with a CRM system, to say the least. If you want to learn more about what we have, feel free to reach out. We have comprehensive packages to give you a great deal on a CRM system and even a website. Not too bad of a cost, to say the least. So just let me know. Overcoming objectives or objections, excuse me. This is always the most interesting part. So some people will say, I already have coverage, and that's totally fine. You can take this a couple different ways. The first way is, as you see on the screen, maybe it's time to review it. You can also ask them, what type of coverage is it? Most of the time, people won't know. A lot of times people buy policies because their friends ask them to, right? You just got in the business, friend tells you, hey, can you buy something from me? And there's no rhyme or reason, so you end up buying like two or three policies as you go through this process, and there's just, again, no rhyme or reason. So if you ask someone just as a rebuttal, I have coverage, great, what kind do you have? I got through work. Okay, how much did you get? I don't know. So, do you think that that's a great answer to take care of your family in case something happens to you? Do you know that if the work pays for it, it's taxable, but if you have your own individual, it's tax free? So, things like that help you better equip yourself in case objections come up. I can't afford this right now. Totally fine. You're going to find a lot of people in this industry will try and oversell the idea of permanent insurance because the targets are higher than term insurance. I call term insurance the gift that keeps on giving because you, one, find the need for the customer, and two, you have touch points throughout the rest of their life or however long they have that term insurance to convert it. And then when you convert it, you get paid again. So it's a double win because you're staying on top of your client, checking in with them on an annual basis, and then ultimately seeing if there's time to convert it. I need to think about it. This is a tough one because this can go a couple different ways. So there's one here where you see what specific questions or concerns can I address to help you make a more confident decision. That could be a little aggressive for some people, or it might be a little hard for some people to ask that type of question. So, a lot of times when you say, I need to think about it, what I'll say is, I totally get you need to think about it. How does 4 to 6 weeks sound? That's a lot of time. That's perfect. Well, what I would say is why don't we put in what I call a trial application to see if you're even insurable, because 4 to 6 weeks is about the time it takes to go through underwriting. So now all of a sudden they're sitting there thinking to themselves like, all right, there's no obligation, no fear, no issue. Let's put the application in. And then now you have a greater chance of close because that application is in. So it makes it a lot easier for you to get the sale pushed through from that standpoint by just saying something like a trial application. So when we think about structuring a needs-based case, You have, again, as I mentioned before, the income protection. So when you talk about simple things like term insurance, kids, mortgage, and paycheck, so those three, if you know anybody who has a mortgage, has kids, and has a job, or a combination of the three, guess what? You have a sale or at least a conversation to be had to talk about term insurance. When you talk about wealth accumulation, aligning investments and saving strategies, again, goes back to that question of what keeps you up at night. Is it that fear of loss, like death, or is it that fear of not being able to outlive or a fear of outliving your assets? So, wealth accumulation is definitely a big concern. And to be quite frank, that's what most people like to talk about is retirement. Family protection kind of goes along with income protection. Retirement planning kind of goes along with wealth accumulation. So different kinds of opportunities that you can really, customize and tailorize, excuse me. And then the follow-up. So this is pretty important, so reinforcing value. How many people typically buy at the first point of sale? Not many. And so what you have to do is you have to curb the people's research, if you will. So if I had a client who said I have to think about it, I give the 4 to 6 weeks. They say, no, let me just think about it for a couple days or so. Perfectly fine. Reinforce the value. So send an email, say, hey, so and so, really great, talking to you. As a recap, I'd like to just go over what we talked about. We did this, and this. And let me share with you a few articles. So instead of someone going online, say you pitched an IUL, and then all of a sudden they go online and they say, our IUL's bad. If you search it for it, you'll find it. So you have to send articles and things to substantiate exactly what your proposal is. Otherwise, you're left to them searching on their own devices. So have some articles ready, have some type of value points that you have for that follow-up to reinforce your value and your value proposition. And then regular check-ins. So regular check-ins on the submission, check-ins on the processing of the business, check-ins after a policy review every single year is probably one of the most important things you can do to check in with your client. And continuous education as well is very important. So anything new in the industry, anything that you feel is advantageous to update people on is going to help you solidify your position with that customer because it's not, my old wholesaler would say half the game is showing up. So if you're showing up, you're in their face, the more likely they're going to come back to you and give you that business in case there's extra business, or they might like the continuous conversation and then once again refer you to someone else. And if you can, the CRM would help with this. Milestones like birthdays or anniversaries that can all be part of the financial needs analysis. You can gather that information and then get it automated so it sends out automatic emails to your customers on their birthdays. So what this does for you in regards to measuring success, you should see an increase in implementation. You should see an increase in that value proposition to your customer. Your acceptance rate should go up given the amount of tailored solutions that you're providing, that value proposition that you're giving. And more importantly, part of it is really that client satisfaction. So as long as you have the right satisfaction for the customer, it's going to provide that opportunity for referrals. How many of you today are saying to your customer, hey, I want to thank you for the business. Again, this is not the end of our relationship, it's actually the beginning. If you feel that I've done an adequate job for you, do you have a couple people that you feel could also use my services? And that's just asking for referrals and growing your business. So as soon as you do that, now you're opening up for more opportunity. Even if they give you one person, that's one more person than you actually had before. So that's what's creating that referral growth. And you don't have to rely on, trying to, get leads or trying to do X, Y, or Z. It's a way to grow your business without having to spend a ton of money, grassroots. And, we've had some tenured agents here on the calls who have been around for a long time who basically don't need to make phone calls anymore. Their referral business just keeps coming back to them. And, oftentimes if you get a call in, hey, thanks so much for reaching out to me. Just so I know who I can thank, who referred you to me. And then, you can find out who it is, send them a gift card, whatever. But always helps. And it does increase policy retention. So between us and whoever watches this at some later point, there are metrics behind the scenes with every carrier. Okay. So every carrier is monitoring your business. If you have a bunch of cases that die after a year, they might cancel your appointment. If you have cases that are constantly lapsing, you have a bad persistency or a placement ratio. There's some people who would submit policies to three separate companies because they're trying to get the best rate for the customer, one that damages the customer's MIB. And if you place less than 70% of approvals with the carrier, they start to get concerned about your persistency, and then they can also cancel your appointment because they're spending money on underwriting and you're not closing the business, so it's costing them money. Yes, every single case costs an insurance company money. So policy retention is good for you, it's good for the insurance company, and more importantly, it's good for the customer because you're taking care of them. So you want to prioritize the clients first, and really, what I would say is I've really gone back and I've read How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you haven't read it, great book. But the what you see there, the first line is approach every interaction with a client first mindset. We obviously want to go into every sale thinking we are going to get a sale. That's what we want. But is that what the customer wants? So we have to educate, teach, coach, train, and allow them the opportunity to come up with the concern themselves and ultimately buy the product from you. Pooja, it's how to win friends and influence people. So Dale Carnegie. So I think Dale Carnegie. Yeah. It's a Carnegie. But anyway, great book.
It is Dale Carnegie.
Thank you, Gloria. Appreciate it. I was, drawing a blank for a second, so I appreciate you. But again, just having that open mind for these tailored solutions just really help you from an ongoing practice standpoint. So, kind of takeaways from this. Needs-based selling fosters that trust and long-term relationship opportunity. You have the opportunity to structure cases to ultimately get people to that next level and help you get, I guess you would say, better clientele. Really, this is done through active listening, which I would say the best way to do it is effective questioning, you know. And someone said to me a long time ago, God gave you two ears and one mouth for a reason. You should listen twice as much as you speak. And ultimately, because you ask those questions, it is a dance. What you're doing is you're putting guardrails up. So you ask a question and they start getting closer to your solution, but then they might veer off. So you ask another question and it just veers them back. And ultimately, it brings them back to where you have the opportunity to say, all right, well, because you said X, you believe in Y, we should look at Z. And it leads to that conversation, that solution that you're talking about. So that's the basics. I would love to hear if anybody has Any questions? Anything that you need clarification on? Any feedback from your end? Is there stuff here that maybe you didn't um, have a sale go your way, and maybe some thoughts and conversation on how you could position it differently?
So, Phil, I have a question.
Yeah.
Um, so I went to a home to visit one of my Medicare clients,
Mhm.
and she was staying with they were staying with their son,
Mhm.
and after I took care of them, her wife, his wife, and him came out of the room, and we got to talking, and he says, I've invested with term, and lo and behold, it's a Primerica term policy, which
Uh-huh.
I love replacing. I just love replacing. So, of course, he doesn't have the original. He had the original policy. He's telling me that his plan is going up $135 a month now for him and his wife. And he's got children. He's got three children riders on him. One of them is, um, I'd have to check, but I think one of them is going to be uh, riding out of that policy because on a children rider, how long are they considered a child? If they hit 21, does that are they
Depends on the
out?
carrier. Some is 26, so
Okay,
it just depends on the carrier.
okay, so I'd have to find that out.
Yep.
But um, going back to him, he was supposed to have gotten me the new policy because he told me that he's got an increasing face value, and I'm like, I've never heard of a Primerica policy
Term
do.
doesn't increase. Yeah, term doesn't increase in general. So what I would say is it's probably not an increasing face, but an increasing premium. The other thing, unless he has a rider attached to it. So if a rider gets triggered, then you pay more and you now get more death benefit, but I highly doubt that's the case with term. Usually you see that as a additional rider on a permanent policy. Like I know when I worked at MetLife, we had them on our whole life products where at 35, 40, 45, 50, and 55, or if there's a wedding, or a birth or whatever, you could add 50,000 in coverage without any underwriting. But I've never heard of that for term. So what I would say is if you can get the actual policy, I mean, for the price of a Primerica term with all the riders, you could probably give the whole family term insurance, for cheaper. Yeah, joking, of course, I don't know, but I'm never really a fan of having a term policy with a spouse as a rider. Kids, like we did it for our kids. It was on my wife's policy. So she got a term rider for the kids or a child rider, whatever. But now they have their own, full-blown policies. So I would say the simple answer to that is I'm glad you're covered. That's great. But term insurance is such a commoditized product that everyone is fighting to get to the lowest price. If you have your original policy, I would love to look at it or a visual, chart of the schedule because the schedule should say tried and true. Then what we can do is look and see what's in the market. And what I tell people all the time, and this is where certain carriers have a different value proposition, right? So say this person bought a term policy 30 years ago, or well, let's say 20 years ago, right? And there's a 30-year term. Well, you don't have to sell them another 30-year comparison. You'd sell them or show them a 10-year. Whatever's remaining left on that term to what you have available to match really apples to apples at that point. And where that's where Corebridge can be helpful because if someone bought a 20-year term 3 years ago, do you have a 17 years left? Do you sell them a 15 or a 20. Well, with
Hmm.
Corbridge, they have 17. So you can actually, you know, go 17 versus the 17 years remaining on that policy. But
So
at
you would
60, go ahead.
if it's a 30-year term and they've got, let's say they've already been in it for 7 years, you would
Mhm.
take the difference and run it for the cheaper amount of what's left on that term.
That would be as close to apples as possible
Okay.
because of the standpoint of, because at certain ages you age out of 20-year term or 30-year term. So
Hmm.
you can't really show them a complete comparison. So from that standpoint, just try and get as close as possible and match it up. But if you're talking like, is this the son of the Medicare?
Yeah, so he's in his
Okay.
40s. He's in
Okay,
his
I'm like
40s.
65,
No,
you
he
know.
no, the parents are in their 80s. He's in his 40s, and his wife is in his 40s. And they've
Okay,
got a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 21-year-old,
okay.
um, that they've got as riders. Now, would you put the riders on if they want to have a child rider and not put any term on the kids, which I
Yeah.
wouldn't do term on the kids anyways. Um, would you put the riders? Would you put the riders on the wife, the children riders on the wife? Because what they have is first to death. The policies which in the Primerica is whoever dies first is who's going to get the face value. Then the other one's
Yeah.
going to be left with no insurance.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it's a term with a spousal rider, it's whoever, yeah. But yeah, what I would say is whoever's younger and whoever's healthier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's the one I would put it on because it makes the pricing look more even at that point, I guess you would say.
Okay.
So like I was more expensive than my wife, but when you add the rider on, we were about the same. So, it was it's all in perspective from that standpoint. But yeah, I would say again, kind of like how we talked here, it's situational. Based upon what they're looking for, I can guarantee you can find something more cost advantageous for them and give them both their own separate policies versus bundling it all in one and probably still saving them money.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, but
Thank you,
good
Phil.
question. Oh, no problem. Any other questions?
Apple, I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
So, in today's session, you had a comment like, let's say if I'm submitting multiple applications, you said it might hit MIB.
Yeah,
Can you please elaborate a little bit on that?
yeah, absolutely. So, anytime someone submits a policy, there's a organization, Medical Information Bureau or MIB, that gets pinged. So if I apply for, let's say, Prasanna, I'm going to apply for you with AIG, North American, and F&G all at the same time. Well, the MIB is going to get a ping from all three, and anytime you submit an application with a carrier, they check motor vehicle, credit, and MIB because they're finding out if you're going to be overinsured. So they might say, "Hey, Phil, just so you answered no to, any other carriers, but we have through outside sources, client has applied with other carriers, find out the details." What they're going to then do is go back to the agent has to talk to the client, and the client and him say, "All right, well, yeah, we have to tell them that we applied here," because they're trying to figure out how much insurance you're really buying. Because if I couldn't afford two policies, well, guess what? If you get approved for both, well, you got to take one and drop the other, but some people will buy both. And sometimes that's because of a comp play, for a marketing organization who's trying to move up in levels, or situations like that where they're trying to skirt the financials and the companies. So if someone dies in the first 2 years, there could be a contestability issue, the amount of coverage, first off. But second, let's say you get declined by one carrier, then you apply to another carrier, you get declined again, you get declined again. So it creates a bad rap sheet for the client to get multiple declinations. So what I say is in our world, again, for those of us in the Valor system, because I know there's some people here who are not, but if you go with your lead carrier, submit the business, they come back with a declination and why, we can pull the records back and informally shop other carriers to see if someone will take that business. So that's the beauty of it. Is you're not impacting the client's MIB. Other clients are seeing some of the information in advance, so they're going to give more of a clear-cut answer, and it just helps the client and it helps the producer not have to submit multiple applications and hope for the best. So that's the best way to put it.
So, just a follow-up question to that one.
Yeah.
So, is MIB storing all this rejected information?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And
It's like a
if
secret
I'm up,
society.
if I'm applying for a policy, what is the limit that I can go to? Like, is it 20 times the income or net worth?
Every carrier is different. So if you look at, for example's sake, if I pull up, the 3Mark site, I hit login and I'll just do, AIG for example, because it should be pretty easy to find. So let's go to Corebridge. So I know where theirs is, I'm cheating on that one, but so let's say we look at income replacement. So you'll see here, based on age, you have a multiplying factor, right? So if I'm younger than 40, if my income was $100,000, I could apply for $2.5 million and I would be okay. But if I was between 41 and 50, it would only be 2 million. If I wanted 25 times, I would need to financially justify it. I got a mortgage too, I've got kids. There's a lot of different ways that you can justify it, but this is a good benchmark for most people to look at. Same thing with juvies and non-working spouses. So some carriers will limit the amount that you can put on your non-working spouse. Also for juvies, because I know some people like to use IULs as 529 alternatives, and you can stuff, $20,000 in a 500K policy. But some people will be like, no, my kid needs 1 million. It's like, nah, not really. But you can do 1 million with National Life Group. You can do 1 million with F&G. So there are carriers that you can do that with, but you always want to make sure you check the underwriting manual first before you just go firing off, a bunch of policies or applications, because they do have limits. Good example, we had an agent who submitted a case with his prior IMO. All 4 of them got rejected, brought it to us. We looked at the financial underwriting because that's why they got declined. And we looked for a carrier that was better at financials. They asked for less requirements because I think a lot of I work with the Indian community often. They like to disclose little but have a lot. And so they were running into that issue with the prior company asking for tax returns. We didn't need to get tax returns with the company that I used. And agent got all 4 approved, made about a third of $1 million, and everyone was happy. So there's situations like that where understanding the rules of the road, you do the front end like we talked about before with the needs-based selling, but that's where sometimes having that break between your first and your second session will lead to the ability to check your different carriers to find out who is going to be the best one to work with. So that's where understanding some of this stuff on the back end, we call this field underwriting, is so important when it comes to the overall benefit for the consumer, and for you to streamline your approach as well. But that's a great question. Understanding the rules of the road with your different carriers. We got them all pretty much here. So, that way we can help out.
One more follow-up question, Phil.
Go ahead.
Do you recommend going through this underwriting guidelines? I mean, read through and understand, so, or
If you have a knack for like your clients, so that's why I said like 10 times the income, because you're going to be within 10 times the income, mortgage and everything. So it usually levels around $1 million. And if someone says, well, maybe I want more, then we can say, okay, and then let me just double check and make sure you can financially qualify for it. And you can always find out using the underwriting manuals. But that's why I say master a few carriers. Knowing 30 carriers is not going to benefit you, but having them at your back when you need them, just in case, is always a good thing. But master a few carriers, understand some of the sweet spots that they may have, including financial underwriting, and it'll help you get more clients quicker, is the best way to put it.
got it. Thank you.
No problem. That time for maybe one more question before the hour is up. I hate to go longer than an hour on the Thursdays. So anyone have any last questions? These are all good questions so far, though. Everyone awake? Hope so.
Yes.
I know, Tiffany. Thank you. Well, I think we're good. Pooja, you got a question?
Yes, Phil. So I have a question. How to educate people? My problem is that they are not even ready to talk to me.
Why are they not ready to talk to you? What's the concern? Like,
So
what do you
he,
say to them?
like I have some of very close friends, and they all bought houses in last 6 months. So I was asking them that, hey, do you have any? I normally talk like a umbrella, like you should have umbrella or a safety net. So I asked them that, do you have something for protection for your home to protect your home? And they were like, we are on visa, we don't want, or we have from our company, or it's of no use. And after that period, no talking.
So what I would say is that over the phone? Is that in
No, one
person?
on one in person.
Okay. So it goes back to politely interjecting and say, okay, how much do you have at work?
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll usually say it's usually 1 times your income,
Mm-hmm.
4 times maybe, until
Mm-hmm.
you start to have to pay for it, which might be like at AIG, I had 8, but I had to pay for the extra 4.
Mm-hmm.
But you go back, okay, you bought this house, um, and there's a mortgage on it. So tell me, Pooja, if Phil doesn't make it home tonight, how are you paying for this house?
Mm-hmm. No
Just
question.
shut up, and just
Mm-hmm.
listen. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Phil, if Pooja doesn't make it home tonight, how are you gonna pay for this house? I see you got 2 kids walking around.
Mm-hmm.
Who's gonna take care of the kids if you're still working? Because those bills don't stop.
Yep.
Okay. Questions lead to them having to open up. For you to say, hey, you bought a house, that means you need to buy mortgage protection. I wouldn't, that's not something that I would simply say, you're right. Let's do an application. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to make the Bruce and then
Mm-hmm.
push it. So just let them explain because they're going to trip over themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
you're okay that if Phil passes away, that you'll have to work, put your kids through daycare, you'll have enough to cover the mortgage and sustain the life that you have today. You're telling me that you have that.
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're on visa, a 10-year term at least protects you because we know visas last only a certain duration of time, but a
Mm-hmm.
10-year term could at least cover you while you're here. It's dirt cheap and it will protect you. And if you leave, you just cut bait and you're good to go. Pooja, my fear is that if something happens to you, you're going to have a big concern and you're going to say, I wish I took that when I had the chance.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
It's not aggressive, but you're showing concern,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of you leading with the solution, you have to story tell it to get to the solution that they came to the answer that you're ultimately feeding.
Mm-hmm. And how to start it? Like sometimes it's okay that happened because they came to my house and they just purchased a house near me, something
Yeah.
like that. But new people or the people who stopped the conversation few months back, how to restart a conversation?
Hey Pooja, just wanted to let you know I was in a training session with, a mentor of mine in the financial services industry, and the conversations we had really made me think of you guys. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have 30 minutes over a cup of coffee just to talk?
Okay.
You know, this is what I learned in the session, and this is what made me think of you guys. Now, the only reason why I'm saying this again is because I really care about your situation, your kids, and your family in general.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of go into it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So that can revitalize the opportunity. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to move away because apparently like the sun is just nailing me right here. So I feel like I have a halo, right? Uh, but yeah, that should that should help out from that standpoint. But let them hang themselves, you
Okay.
know, because
Thank you.
the wife's gonna get pissed, if the husband's like, ah, she'll be fine, she'll marry someone else. No, I won't, and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that should help. And
Okay.
honestly, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil.
No problem. All right. Well, we hit the hour. I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you so much. Also, I'm just going to send out these text reminders, per week. So as I hope you don't find it invasive, but it's just to let everyone know we got training and yeah, Momtaz, what you got?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, if the client is a Canadian citizen and they have I-94, can we ask for them life insurance?
They need to have a visa, a valid visa. If they have a passport, we can use National Life Group for them.
He send me, I'm doing life insurance, health insurance too. So they send me the paperwork like I-94 for all four of them.
Mhm.
And it says valid up to 27. Should I
Yeah,
ask them?
you
When he
should.
bought the house, let me finish. He bought the house few months ago. Should
Yeah,
I ask him for the life insurance?
you can with National Life Group. The only thing you run into is provincial law. There are some provinces in Canada where you're not allowed to buy American insurance. So do
No,
you
but
know
he is
what?
living here. He have
I
a
know. It doesn't
yeah.
matter if you're a Canadian citizen here, depending on what province you came from, you might not be able to get insurance. There's parts of Turkey and I think England as well, some parts of England where you can't get American
Okay.
insurance. So
Okay. I
if you
just
can find out
remember.
where,
Yeah.
yeah, if you can find out what part of Canada they're from, like if it's
I can
like
tell you if you don't mind, I can tell you right now.
yeah, go ahead.
I have in my email this information. Hold on.
Sure.
I just checked all of this. Okay. It says I-94 admission number and is hold on. Document number is there and country of citizen Canada.
Yeah, but does it say what province or province?
No, no,
Okay.
they don't say they're not an employer, local, state, or federal.
You'd have to
And
you'd have to find out like if it's Manitoba, I think Nova Scotia or no-goes. But like if they're from Toronto area or Montreal,
Okay, it's nothing.
Ontario, you should be fine.
Yeah. Security in American US Custom and Board Protection, most recent I-94. It is
Yeah.
February 6th, January 6th, 25. It says E2 class
Yeah,
admission.
that's just that. Well, that's the visa. So they have a visa. So
Right.
you should be able to write it. The only thing is again finding out the provincial law. So long story
Okay.
short, we can definitely take that one offline. And if you can find out where they're from, I'll let you know
Yeah.
who you can write with. Okay.
Okay, I will find out from him.
All right.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
no problem. Have a great day, guys. Take
Bye.
care, and we'll see you soon.
Mm-hmm.